Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
Okay, I'm going to start out with some shout-outs today. First up, Tectonic Coffee. LA-based coffee roasters, they're the purveyors of super clean caffeine. Ethics are at the core of everything they do, and like so many small businesses, they've been doing it tough through the pandemic. And as a gratitude for the support they have received, if you purchase coffee between March 16th and or up until the end of July, you will automatically become an Inner Core member and receive wholesale prices for the rest of your life. So go to www.tectoniccoffee.com. That's TECTONIC coffee.com. They ship worldwide, and if you use promo code THT, you'll also get a nice discount. So, use it at the checkout and become an Inner Core member. And as always, big shout out to Indosol. You know, I love these guys. I talk about them all the time. Any company that makes footwear from repurposed motor vehicle tyres that would usually go into landfill is all right by me. They are a B certified company. And what's funny, I was looking at their B certification and it says that means they're vegan as well. So, you can even eat them. And if you're a vegan, which is great, but I don't know how they taste. What do you reckon, Doug?
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
So go to www.indosol.com. That's INDOSOLE.com. They ship worldwide. They have distributors everywhere, and you can often get your shoes within a day or two. And use promo code THT and you'll get a discount. You'll support the show, and they now have distributors in Europe and the Middle East, which is awesome. All right, Doug, are you ready to roll?
Yes, sure am, Shan.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks.
Today's guest is Doug Hearne. Doug is a husband, father, and educational leader of the highest standard, even though he was a little bit shy when I told him I was going to say that. Doug was a member of the national expert panel that set up the framework and structure of the Australian health and PE curriculum. Doug began as a classroom teacher before progressing to a lecturer at the University of Wollongong, Vice President of the Australian Council for Health, Physical Education and Recreation, or ACHPER for short. And then finally, in the final part of his career, he was the principal of a large co-educational public high school in southern Sydney. In my opinion, Doug's passion for educational reform is unparalleled and is mirrored by the hundreds of university students he has led and developed into quality teachers. Now, newly retired and looking very relaxed with a glass of red wine, today, Doug is with me to share his journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Doug Hearne, welcome.
Great, Shannon. Great to be with you.
Mate.
Good to catch up.
It is, and I just love how, I don't know what it is, the universe just puts the right guests in place at the right time. I just feel like it was very... I don't know, there's some synchronicity there.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, man.
It's good.
So,
fantastic.
In short, what's a day in the life of a retired teacher like?
Well, I'd probably start by saying semi-retired, depending which day of the week. Still involved in some consultancy work with other retired principals. We're an independent group where if we're invited into schools by principals, we'll go in and do work ranging from whole school evaluations to faculty evaluations to mentoring, coaching, support for teachers, particularly in leadership roles, head teachers, etc. If it's a Monday, I'll be at my tap dancing classes, adult tap dancing classes, which I've been doing for 3 years.
I'm not laughing.
No, don't laugh.
Keep going.
It's very good. And the Monday morning adult tap is a group of mostly retired teachers, and we have a hoot. It's great fun. And then other days it's editing my daughter's university assignments or doing house stuff that needs to be done. A variety of things.
Editing her assignments or doing them for her?
No, editing and providing some strategic directions around where she might go with those assignments, but never doing them for her. No, never.
Nice.
That would be unethical.
Is she doing a teaching degree?
She's doing physical education degree. She started at the University of Wollongong last year in primary. Didn't find that particularly satisfying. This year has moved across to physical education, health and physical education, and is loving it.
As a parent, when you see your child wanting to follow your footsteps, how does that make you feel?
Well, there's a bit of pride in all of that, I must say. My wife's also a health and physical education teacher. So, there is a bit of a background there for her. We didn't push, we let her choose her course and choose her path. And initially she thought primary school teaching was where she wanted to head, but then decided that maybe moving into physical education was a better choice. She did get offered a position in the health and physical education course at the university when she finished school. Didn't take up that option, but if she chooses to take that path, she'll be an outstanding teacher.
Why?
Oh, look,
what gives you that idea? What has she got?
She has a great depth of compassion, but she also has a great sense of hard ass about her.
Define hard ass in the teaching setting.
Look, tough love is how I'd call it in the teaching setting, The standards needs to be set, standards need to be maintained. The well-being of kids needs to be deeply considered, but you can't always lower standards because of difficult and challenging circumstances for kids. That well-being circumstances need to be well looked after for kids and well supported, but there are standards that need to be maintained. So she has a good sense of that.
So, I know that a lot of teachers do struggle with boundaries, and I personally feel that, classroom management and, I guess, behaviour management are really, the fundamentals and the foundation of good quality teaching, because I feel like unless they're in place, you're not really going to be doing any quality teaching and learning. Yep. But explicitly, what do you think boundaries look like in the educational setting? So can you give me some examples of what needs to be done?
First and foremost, build relationships with kids. Positive relationships with kids is key. Working with them, understanding them, not being their friend, but, letting them see that you care about them and that you want to help them and guide them. That's core. If you haven't got that, you're not going anywhere as a teacher. Certainly things that sit around that are things like, consistency, procedures, not playing favourites, making sure that if it's a process or a procedure that you have in your classroom that applies to everybody, and that's applied consistently. The other key thing in and around it is, showing students a passion for what you're trying to teach them. If you don't have a passion for what it is that you're teaching them, it's difficult for them to engage in what it is that they're supposed to be learning. So, the relationship stuff, the passion in what it is you're teaching students, and wrapped around that consistency, process, procedures.
Consistency, process and procedures, Yeah, I'm really feeling that as well, actually. I feel like the lines can get blurred really easy, and I think going back to what you're saying about making kids feel, I guess, nurtured, I think consistency is so key to that. And they, in my opinion, I feel like structure makes them feel safe.
Yep.
Yeah, and I feel like we can go cough. Oh, Doug.
Excuse me.
Doug. No, we're going to have to. Oh, now we're going to have to. You've just ruined the whole recording. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, it's a good one. I agree. And just sort of listening to you speak about all the things that we need to consider as educators, it's a full-on job, man.
it is a very challenging job. But the other side of it is it's a highly rewarding profession. I wanted to be a teacher from about the time I was 16. I wanted to be a physical education teacher from about the time I was 16.
Really?
And it has been the most rewarding thing. It's the only thing I've done.
Right.
And it's been the most rewarding thing I've done. It's an amazing profession, teaching, challenging, difficult. Accountability is increasing all the time. Demands on teachers increasing all the time. But I wouldn't have wanted to have done anything else.
When do you see the rewards?
Oh, look, I see the rewards if I'm walking down the street and I cross the path of a student I've taught. I will not remember their name, but they will say to me, "Hello, Mr. Hearne, you taught me," and that's enough for me. They are the greatest rewards. And even the fact you've invited me to come and do this with you tonight is a great reward.
Man. You had an impact on me, dude. You did. Like I always tell people, like Doug Hearne was my favourite lecturer at uni, and some of your practices that you showed us and you taught us, like I still use to this day.
Yep.
So. Like I think a lot of teachers, myself included, we take it for granted sometimes the depth of impact that we're having.
Yep.
But now that I've sort of been in the game a little while, like I've been around for a little bit, but long enough where students finish school and it's the years after when they come back to say thanks, or they see you in the street. And I've just had a student recently contact me in Bali, and he's 25 now, and we're kind of like proper mates now, and it's like, wow, but most days it feels like the most thankless job on earth.
It can be like that. But those times when you get those little gems of recognition or something back, they're the things that just make it all the worthwhile.
I agree, man.
From the context of my teaching in the university sector, when I went into teacher education, the number of students who came through the health and PE degree that I now see in leadership roles in schools, either as head teachers, deputy principals, and there are many of them across New South Wales these days. That's very rewarding as well.
And look, I'm just going to say this. I still think it's the best education degree in Australia. Like now that I feel like I can compare in some ways, like the quality of it was just unparalleled. And then a lot, like you just said, like a lot of the people I graduated with have gone on to many leadership roles, and I just think, well, there's something to it. There's a commonality there.
And I guess it's not just development in terms of education in school settings, because not everybody stays in teaching, but people branching off into other walks of life and other professions where you see them achieving in different ways, and you think, well, I had some influence on that.
Yeah, in what other sectors do you think teachers could function well with the skills they develop?
Oh, look, any sector.
Podcasting?
Any sector. What did you say, broadcast? Podcasting, sensational. Any sector where you're working with groups of people, giving them
keep going
direction, giving them support, communicating, having to make decisions, having to solve problems, any walk of life where there's key things that are part of the work. An education degree is a great background.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely gets you, it teaches you how to multitask pretty well.
Yep.
Even though I still don't multitask well, I'm better than I was.
But, making decisions under pressure, having to juggle 3 or 4 things at the same time, having to, allocate tasks to other people. That's not just in the school setting, that's in lots of workplaces, and certainly an education degree can help in that way.
Yeah, I agree. So where'd you grow up, Doug?
Oh, I grew up in Newcastle in New South Wales, about 3 hours north of Sydney.
Yep.
A very working class upbringing in Newcastle. My dad had an administrative job in a large steelworks company. My mum, domestic duties. So Newcastle was where I grew up.
And how do you reflect on your childhood in Newcastle?
Oh, look, it was a great childhood. You know, back in the day, we played cricket in the street till all hours, and we, the helicopter parent syndrome wasn't quite as it is these days. You could go out, leave the house open. I had lots of friends. I had, played a lot of sport. Well, I played a lot of soccer, not a variety of sports, but, I was reasonably successful as a soccer player as a kid, and that gave me lots of opportunities. Yeah, so, life in Newcastle was pretty good.
Nice. I hear Newcastle's a good town. Like,
It's a good place.
I mean, in my opinion, I've always sort of seen it very similar to Wollongong with the steelworks and the shipping port and that sort of stuff.
Certainly that. I think the big difference between Newcastle and Wollongong has been the closing of the steelworks in Newcastle, because it meant the city had to diversify and find other ways of building and maintaining its economy, and a lot of that's been around tourism and hospitality. It's a big university town like Wollongong is, but it has had to find other ways to maintain its economy, whereas Wollongong, we're still pretty heavily reliant on the steelworks here.
Yeah, we are. I noticed it. Yeah, so like soccer was part of your upbringing. I didn't know that about you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you you went into surfing?
No.
Interesting.
No,
This is a big surf town.
Big surf town like Wollongong. I've never been a great beach goer. I like being at the beach. I like walking on the beach. I've never been a great one for the surf particularly, and never a surfer of any sense. No, not at all.
Nice. So you obviously did your like early learning there at public schools and primary schools and...
Yep. I went to a great little primary school, Mayfield West Primary School. I was school captain there in year 6.
Of course you were. See, there you go, right there. Overachiever from the start.
And then I went off to high school. Was an all-boys selective high school. That was the go back in the mid-70s. Lots of selective high schools, tiered selective high schools. So my school was a selective all-boys public high school. I was pretty average academically, did okay. My HSC was okay. Found my way in that school probably through my sport again.
When you say average academically, what are you gauging that off specifically?
Oh, well.
Literacy and numeracy results?
No. It's just where you find yourself compared to others, being a selective high school, all boys high school. It was the school where the lawyers, the doctors, the accountants of Newcastle were all educated.
So you had to qualify to get into that?
Yeah. You didn't have to sit a test per se. But you had to have. There was some accountability, and I can't even remember what they were. But there was, they probably had to look at your primary school reports, that sort of stuff. My 2 older brothers had gone to the same school, so a little bit of sibling support helped along the way to get in there. But it was a good place. I enjoyed high school.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it was good.
So, what was your favourite subject?
Well, it was probably PE, I must say. It was interesting because we had physical education was never as big as what it is now. There were no faculties, there were no head teachers. Health education wasn't a thing. You did 2 periods of PE a week. And I don't know, I just had a couple of PE teachers there who were pretty tough characters, If you didn't bring your uniform, you got the paddle bat on the backside.
I can't even fathom that.
No.
Can you?
No, I can't, But
that a teacher could hit a student.
That was it,
That's crazy.
Cane was still a thing, I remember I got the cane once.
I got the cane once.
I got the cane for throwing an apple at one of my mates, and the deputy principal got very annoyed with me, so caned me.
Traumatised you?
I wasn't happy about it. my middle finger did
traumatised me.
Swell up some. I certainly PE. Other subjects, I did pretty well at English, and I did pretty well at maths. I was pretty good at learning formulas and applying formulas. Mathematically now as an adult, I wouldn't say I'm any particular great shape, but I did okay at maths. I was hopeless at physics. Oh. Which is interesting because I did okay at maths, and a lot of physics is maths, but I just couldn't make the connection.
I kind of feel like you're either really good at physics or you're just not. There's no in between there. Is that how it is?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like, so you enjoyed PDH or PE and health, but and you did well at it because you enjoyed it, but then you sort of were able to adapt quite well to the mathematical side of things.
Yeah.
See, I find that interesting because for me, like, yes, I did health and PE only because it was like where my skill set was.
Yeah.
But I always was okay at English and writing, and especially creative writing, and ancient history as well. Ancient history, I just had a pure love of the content. But
so I never did any history subjects, and I love history. As an adult, I've loved history, and I've always regretted that I never did history as a subject at school. I picked things like economics and geography, and I wasn't flash at them. But I think I would have done all right at history, but I never picked any history subjects at school.
Really? There you go.
I don't think I really had a great love of it then, but, I've been fortunate enough to travel a bit, and I really do quite like historical things and the history of things and finding out the history of things. Yeah.
Like growing up in those early years, like whether it's primary school or high school, was there a particular teacher that really stood out for you that you remember?
Oh, primary school, I remember a teacher, Mr. Davis, was my year 4 teacher, and he was fantastic. He led the choir, and I liked singing, so I was in the school choir with him, and he was a fantastic teacher. I really did enjoy him as a teacher.
Why?
He was personable and friendly, and, he got on well with students. The other end of the continuum in year 5, I had a teacher called Mr. Gilmore, I seem to remember, and being a left-handed writer, he was hell-bent on turning me into a right-handed writer, and that just wasn't going to happen. So, and he just wasn't friendly. He was grumpy. And
that's funny. He thought he could convert you.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Back then they used to go around and whack you with a ruler on the left hand and tell you to write with your right hand and all that sort of stuff.
Amazing.
But high school, the PE teachers, I got on well with. There was no one particular teacher who I got on exceptionally well with in high school. I just think I had the ability just to, manage my way and, have good relationships with all of my teachers. I was never I was never a troublemaker.
I don't believe it.
And I would be horrified if I was ever getting into trouble or on detention. So that just wasn't a thing. So that never happened.
You're horrified because you might get in trouble from your parents at home?
Oh, I'd just be too embarrassed about it all.
Embarrassed.
And it's a funny thing because my son, who turned 21 last week, is exactly the same. He would never have wanted to be, stepping out of line through school.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite spooky that has very similar qualities in that regard.
Yeah. I wish I could say the same. I felt like I just wanted the attention. I mean, a lot of young people that do, get in trouble at school, it's just attention.
Yeah.
You didn't feel like you wanted that extra attention at school?
No.
You were happy just to...
I got lots of recognition. I ended up as at the high school, there was a very traditional prefect system in the school. So in year 12, I was elected as a prefect, and that was a bit of recognition. My sport through, playing soccer and state knockout competitions for schools, we achieved pretty well. So, I got enough recognition in those ways that,
that was enough for you.
Satisfied the need for me. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, after high school, you said you did okay in your HSC results. Did you transition straight to high school? I mean, straight to university?
I did.
Which university?
Well, my application initially was to go to Newcastle University because I could have studied to be a physical education teacher at Newcastle University. That was back in the day when, let me come back a bit because there were still things called teachers' colleges in those days. And so you went to teachers' college to do your teacher training. But my HSC results were not good enough to get into Newcastle University, Newcastle Teachers' College.
Oh, wow.
So I was quite devastated about that. So when those first round of offers for Teachers' College came out and I didn't get offered a position at Newcastle Uni, I was pretty unhappy. That was also back in the day where there were Teachers' College scholarships, so you were paid to train.
Wow.
About 2 weeks after that, second round of offers came out, and then I got offered a position at Wollongong Teachers College, or Wollongong Institute of Education as it was called in the day. So very quickly I had to pack and move from Newcastle, 3 hours north of Sydney, to Wollongong, about an hour south of Sydney. And, life began as a trainee teacher in Wollongong.
That's what got you here.
Yeah.
How interesting. So obviously you said you were quite sporty with your soccer and stuff,
Yep.
and you enjoyed, health and physical education. What has actually kept you in the profession of being a PDHPE teacher over the years? Like as the years have progressed, what actually keeps you in that?
Well,
because surely you might. Sorry to jump in.
No,
on
that's
you,
okay.
Surely you must. You've done it for a while. You must go through phases where you're like, I'm just over this content. I'm over, delivering the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
all the
look,
time.
I don't think I ever got to that stage because I sort of jumped a little bit in terms of my career. I started as a classroom teacher. After about 4 years, I moved into a consultancy position. So in southwestern Sydney, I was a health and PE consultant.
After 4 years of being a teacher?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah, not much more. And so I was based in an office going into schools, helping them with their PE programs and, developing PE programs with them and for them. So that was a very interesting role. And then I moved and became a head teacher. So I was in a school where I was the head of a faculty, so I was leading 5 or 6 other teachers. And then I jumped out again and went to a state office position where I was working on physical education curriculum at a state office position in Sydney. So
in terms of developing curriculum, government curriculum?
Yep. For government schools.
That's prescribed to schools?
Yeah.
Wow, how did you like that?
That was good. I've always enjoyed those non-school based positions, as we'd call them. I've always enjoyed that. Then it was another position back into school as a head teacher, and then after that it was to Wollongong University into the lecturing role. So I moved around a bit. I always enjoyed where I was, but I always probably had an eye on what's the next thing, I think.
Why? Is it because you were never
ambition,
satisfied?
No,
or
I was
like
satisfied, but I think I was just ambitious.
You like to progress?
Yep. I always enjoyed where I was working and what I was doing. But other doors opened and other opportunities, came up for me. So, for example, the opportunity to go to Wollongong University into the lecturing role came about because some of the people working in that program were people who taught me through my Teachers College program, and they were still at the university, and so a position came up and, I don't know, somehow my name was put forward and I got a phone call one day to say, do you want to come and work at Wollongong University for a year? And
Amazing.
I was there for 12 years.
12 years there.
Yeah.
So this is what I've always been curious about because, I've always entertained the idea of, being a lecturer at university must just be the dream because you don't have to deal with young, teenagers. You're dealing with, students that are older and want to be there. Yeah. So what are some comparisons that you seen working, in public education compared to, say, a university?
Look,
was it as
there were lots of
stressful?
No. Oh, different stresses.
What were the different challenges? Maybe
there were lots of similarities because although you would expect that students were there because they were motivated to be in a particular degree, getting quality work from them was from some of them was not always the case. There's lots of politics in universities as there were in schools in terms of, who gets to teach what subjects and, who gets promotions or who gets particular positions in the faculty at the university. So there were always those sorts of similarities. The opportunity to think and reflect and were good opportunities. The pace of working in the university was nowhere near the full-on pace of working in a school. You'd teach for 50 minutes, you'd have 30 students, you'd go off to another 30 students and you'd go for 50 minutes. You might be able to grab a bit of lunch if you were lucky and then you'd be going again. That pace of the work day wasn't the same. The ability to work in the university setting with a range of people who were had been very successful teachers in schools.
Gotcha.
But it had also, ended up in the tertiary sector. That was unbelievable. Some amazing people I've been able to work with, and discuss education generally with, discuss physical and health education with, devise subjects that meet the needs of, contemporary education. And, some of those people are my best friends still, amazing.
Was that always at the forefront of your planning? Trying to stay relevant with the...
Always.
I could tell.
My view is if you're not staying relevant, I would say, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
And I always needed to make sure that whatever I was teaching students in university, that if they walked into a school setting, whether it was professional experience or, graduating from uni, that they could see a connection between what they'd done at uni and what was happening in schools, and that it was not a case of, this is absolutely foreign, because none of what's going on in school makes any sense to me to what I got from my university degree.
Yeah. So you made sure there was a connect.
Absolutely.
Because you often hear university students say, like myself included, and then when I've had practicum students over the years, that they say, most of the stuff I've learned is while I'm on my work experience.
Yep. And that's okay, because professional experience in schools is at the coalface. The university context is more theoretical. Talking more in abstracts, whereas professional experience gives the context for applying that. But if the theory isn't relevant, if the discussions and the thinking and the reflecting isn't based on what's going on in schools, then things like the professional experience, aren't as relevant.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love that. What about in terms of at the universities, I guess you wouldn't have to deal with as many welfare issues,
Look, they
come in different forms.
No, they increased over time.
Did they?
Yeah, look,
How interesting.
The increase in, particularly mental health issues, students not coping, students not managing.
Wow.
Used to see that a bit in students who who moved to university, left their homes wherever they were, regional New South Wales, and coming to a place that a big city that they'd never lived in before. So the challenges of getting students through degrees increased significantly over time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd often think that there would be elements that you wouldn't have to deal with as much. Again, in the public sector and other schools, public or private, it's a big part of being a teacher.
Yeah,
managing welfare.
Yep, and again, it comes back to some of our original comments that you've got to be very mindful of the well-being of students. You've got to be very mindful of what they bring into your school, your classroom on any given day, and you've got to have the ability to empathise with that and support students with that, but you've also got an important job to engage them in their learning.
So true. I love it. So true. Yeah. So you're at University of Wollongong for 12 years.
Yep.
A great experience.
Yep.
Had some amazing students.
Had some amazing,
especially
students.
The class of 2002.
Especially the class.
That class was amazing. That was amazing.
That was amazing.
Actually, no, it's 3. I can't remember. So then, and then from there, your next move was to go back into public schools?
Yeah, so that was an interesting thing because there was a stage.
It's like
there was a stage.
It's Doug's dog.
My dog is having a little bit of a hissy fit.
It's exciting.
There was a stage there where I thought uni would be my career path till the end. I had 2 attempts at PhDs. To complete doctoral study for various reasons. Both of them, I didn't get to the end of either of them.
Can I ask why?
Oh, look, the challenges of being a full-time academic with a significant teaching and marking load.
That's okay. This is so funny.
Particularly the marking load that comes with, running large subjects.
Is that part of a PhD student?
No. But while I was still having to do that to young kids, young family, then the demands of research and writing a PhD, it didn't come together for me. I had great supervisors, I had great support. It just didn't come together for me.
Interesting.
Lots of people who complete PhDs in universities, well, from my experience, they come out of their undergraduate degree, they go straight into a PhD scholarship. They're often not married, no kids, and they have a bit more space and time to be able to complete their PhD studies. But it got to the point where they didn't work for me, so I thought maybe this is a sign. It's time for me to move to something else. And so I decided that to leave the tertiary sector and move back into public education was the thing to do.
And where'd you go? Back to being a classroom teacher?
No, I was fortunate enough. I got a position in a school. The Department of Education had just created positions called head teacher mentor.
I've heard about those positions.
So in the course of all of this, teacher accreditation had become a thing. Professional teaching standards had been developed and teachers were required to become accredited against these professional teaching standards. And so the department created these positions called head teacher mentor. Sometimes they were teachers who worked across 2 or 3 schools. I was lucky enough, I was working in a school in Campbelltown where I was head teacher mentor in the one school, full-time in the one school. So I was there for 2 years as head teacher mentor, supporting and working with new and beginning teachers to adjust to teaching, but also to help them get through their accreditation processes as well. So, I left the Department of Education as a head teacher. I went back as a head teacher. And then, other things progressed from there.
I understand why accreditation is important. Yep. I do.
Yep.
My question is it putting too much added pressure on new teachers?
My answer to that would be no.
Why?
Because the accreditation process is nothing more than really quite low-level administration and paperwork around their daily practice. So the accreditation process at the mandatory level, at the probationary teacher, as we call it here in New South Wales, they have to put together 6 to 7 pieces of evidence. Each piece of evidence is probably no more than a couple of pages. They have, up to 2 years to put that together. So it's not particularly onerous or demanding. The challenge, though, is having people in their schools who know the process well enough to support them through it. So I've heard stories of young teachers who are completing their accreditation who knew more about the process than the supervisors in their schools who were helping them through it.
That's hilarious.
So I don't think it's at what we call the higher levels of accreditation. It's a challenging process to move to be accredited as a highly accomplished teacher or a lead teacher. The processes around that are much more demanding.
Do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worth the extra pressure and work to get to that level as a teacher? I question at those higher levels, at highly accomplished and lead, I question whether the demands that are required are worth it. Worth it in terms of what? The way they're compensated, time and money-wise?
No, well, there's none. There's none.
There's no money. There's no money. Monetary compensation. Like there must be.
No. What it might lead to is you getting promoted to become a head teacher, and then there's monetary compensation. But
gotcha.
Completing that higher levels of accreditation in and of itself gives you no extra money. But the other part of it, though, I must say, is I think the intrinsic rewards of reflecting on your work, putting together evidence of what you do and how you go about it. I think there are some great rewards in that. I think the administrative stuff that sits around it is a bit
onerous,
complex,
yeah.
The other thing about the whole accreditation thing at whatever level, though, is a bit of a mindset thing, because in one hand, if young teachers just see it as a process that I have to get through and get the boxes ticked, it's an administrative process, they're selling the process short. If they can think about it as a process of reflecting on where I'm at a particular career stage, or where I'm up to as a young teacher, where I need to develop further, yes, there's some administrative process that sits within that, but if their mindset is more broadly applied to how am I going as a young teacher
and develop my craft,
then that has a lot of value for young teachers. But that
mindset.
That culture is probably still developing in schools. It's by and large, it's seen as an administrative thing, get you through the hoops, get your accreditation done. Because, as we now know, all teachers in schools have to be accredited. And every 5 years, every teacher, whether you've been teaching one day or whether you've been teaching 20 years, now have to go through maintenance of that accreditation. So it's on the table there for all teachers to some degree these days.
Do you think it actually becomes like a filtering system as well?
Can do. It certainly can be a filtering system, particularly for young teachers, about whether this is the right career choice for me, if this is the right path for me or not. If young teachers aren't up to the mark in their first couple of years, completely separate process around their performance and judging their performance, or whether they're working to the required level. There are other processes that sit around that. But, it can be a bit of a reality check for some.
Yeah, I see that as well. Yeah, so you went to a new school and you went in as the head teacher mentor, which is, I remember when that position was established, because I was the first group that had to do the accreditation. It was the first year of it, which actually served me well later when all the other older teachers had to do it. I actually ended up assisting them with the process. It's great.
As I said.
Didn't get compensated any time, but whatever. I'm not bitter. But yeah, so where to from there? Did you did that role for a few years?
That was for a couple of years, and then I was living in Wollongong and travelling up to Campbelltown every day. Then a position came up as a teacher quality advisor with the Department of Education at one of the regional offices down here. So for a couple of years I was a teacher quality advisor, and in that role I was supporting schools across the Illawarra around the accreditation process, around teaching standards, but also around what was called it's still around. It's still a current thing in the Department of Education, the quality teaching model, or the quality teaching framework, as lots of people call it. So that had a lot of currency in schools in that time. So I was working with schools about analysing the quality teaching model and how that applied to classroom practice, how that could improve classroom practice. So there were a few strings to the bow that I had as a quality teaching advisor around the quality teaching model, but also around supporting teachers and schools around accreditation, because the accreditation stuff was really new, really fresh, and nobody really knew where it was going. So they needed lots of support.
Yeah, I mean, so you've been retired now. Is this your first year of retirement?
No, this is I've been retired just over 2 years, a little over 2 years.
And so I know your wife's an educational leader as well.
She is.
Now, you talk about the quality teaching framework, which I really believe in. I think it's brilliant.
Absolutely.
I think it needs to be in place, there's no doubt. And I've been reluctant to talk about the pandemic, COVID-19 situation. How do you think schools have adapted in terms of quality teaching to the circumstances they've been placed under with restrictions?
Look, good question, Shannon. Good question. Look, I think teachers have done, by and large, an outstanding job. They've been thrown in at the deep end, and, there was no choice around the pandemic. They have been absolutely amazing in stepping up to the mark, in providing remote learning opportunities, online learning opportunities for students, keeping students engaged, checking in with students. I think the interesting thing is that remote learning, though, what quality teaching looks like in remote learning, I think that's a whole new ballgame.
That's actually, it's funny, because that was actually sort of like my next question, because I know for me personally, like, I'm trying to look for the positives in this situation. I think there's some amazing opportunities for progressive changes.
Yep.
And for me, like, I learnt some really good strategies for teaching via Zoom. You know, I feel like I'm a bit of a Zoom expert now.
Yeah. No,
And there's
you're behind me because I'm a Zoom.
Are you a Zoom?
I'll tell you my Zoom story.
Why are you a Zoom expert?
Let's digress.
Go.
Since we'll come back to the pandemic.
I'm ready.
Since COVID started, every Friday afternoon from 4:30 till 6:30, a group of my old teachers' college mates who we've stayed in contact with over the years, we have what we call Red Wine Friday.
Right.
And it is via Zoom. So
Really?
it's been amazing.
Hang on a second. Red Wine Friday. I had a friend at university, Dane. He used to have Red Wine Wednesday. Did he get that off you? He might
I
have
got
stole
no
the
idea.
Anyway,
I had no
sorry, keep
idea.
going.
Anyway, so we've been
Terrible.
doing Red Wine Friday for about 3 months now, every
Yep.
Friday.
On Zoom.
On maximum 10 of us, minimum 3 or 4 of us, but we've had a guy in New York, working in New York, come in, people on the north coast of New South Wales, Canberra, a couple of us from Wollongong. So I am the Zoom expert.
You know, I'm going on with that. Like, did you find, like, since all this, like, you've been connecting with people that you wouldn't usually connect with around the world? Yeah, like, that's been the biggest thing for me too. Like,
no, it's been very exciting.
Yeah. I've got friends in California, for example, and prior to this, we'd rarely sort of make the effort. But now, like, we do Zoom calls all the time.
Yeah.
Got the time difference worked out, just to hang out sometimes, say hi.
Yeah. And even friends who I would normally phone call, I'd say, let's FaceTime. Let's get onto FaceTime and have the conversation.
Yeah.
Let's come back to the pandemic and quality teaching.
Yeah, go. I'm ready.
I think you're right. I think there's lots of lessons to be learnt. The use of technology, the integration of technology. I think there's lots of stuff in that teachers will hang on to. For example, things like Google Classroom that teachers have done a lot of work with. And for better or for worse, the pandemic has forced them to take that up and to learn some of those, those platforms. And I think that's been a good thing.
Yeah.
Being able to provide learning material through those platforms, I think, been a really good thing. So I think there's been lots of positive, setting students up to be more responsible for their own learning, through online learning. I think that's something that will, keep building in schools as well.
Yeah.
So whether it's all been quality, hard to know.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that teachers have gone way above and beyond. And I must say, sometimes I think with not the recognition they deserve from government, heads of government departments, leaders in education, because they have just done amazing work.
I agree.
Amazing work.
I think teachers are used to not getting recognition, to be honest. But anyway.
Well, they shouldn't get used to it because it's not fair.
No, it's not. And, it's funny. I think it's a really simple solution, that one, because I think people just like to be recognised for their hard work, and it doesn't take much.
I was reading an interesting article about 2 weeks ago, which was about the 13 qualities of inspirational leaders, the 13 things that inspirational leaders do. And one of them was to give recognition, to say thank you, and to say thank you often, and to provide recognition for the work that people do.
Is that what you did as a principal?
I used to do that as often as I could. As often as I could thank people individually or email whole staff for, events, parent-teacher nights or subject selection nights, any opportunity to thank staff for work they'd done. That was key for me.
Yeah. I want to go back to the Zoom, the teaching via Zoom.
Red Wine Friday?
Red Wine. And then you've got worst hangover Saturday.
That was a bit like that. Yes.
Red wine gives me the worst hangover. I mean, I don't drink, but when I did drink, God, red wine used to just give me the worst hangover. So I don't know why.
I learned a few lessons.
Maybe it was because it was in a cardboard box, that red wine I was drinking.
But when you're online with 5 or 6 of your mates and all we did was tell the same teachers' college stories from 40 years ago.
So you were actually having fun looking at your computer. Did you feel like, because I'm serious here, so this is a point I'm going to get to. When you were doing your Red Wine Friday with your mates, having a few wines, did you feel like you were genuinely connecting with your friends and having a good laugh?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The point I want to make is after literally teaching full-time via Zoom for 3.5 months, which is what the situation I was forced into, teaching across 3 different time zones, Australasia, Europe and America. Amazing. The timetabling was like unbelievable how the school did it. And I was dealt the school I worked at is a private school where there's, high tuition fees, small class sizes and, students that definitely want to learn. There's no such thing as absenteeism.
Yeah.
So, and I was, really forced to try and put some really, good strategies in place and do some in-depth learning. But after the 3 months of it, the one observation I made is I just kind of felt no matter how good my strategies were, I don't feel like the information could be transferred through these screens like they could in person, no matter what I did. I just wasn't translating. I think I still don't actually know why, and I'm sure there's some science to it, but I don't think the depth of understanding was there.
Look, I wouldn't argue with you about that because I think the two contexts are very different. The context I have with the social thing with teachers' college friends who I've known for 40 years who, we meet each other and it's like we've seen each other, we might have seen each other for years, but it's like we saw each other yesterday. The stories we share, the fun times we've shared.
Yeah.
I think the context of that is very different to, the teaching and learning environment. And I've got no doubt that it was, it's been challenging for teachers.
But Red Wine Friday, you weren't necessarily doing any high order thinking.
Oh, it was a very philosophical discussion going on. No, not very high order.
Whereas in a classroom situation, you're kind of expecting the students to be firing.
It was, it was high order banter, high order sledging.
It's so cool. You still hang with your mates from Teachers College.
They are the best friends I have.
Really?
Yep.
That's so cool.
We, there's a guy who I shared house with for the 4 years at Teachers College. He now lives in Canberra. A mate who's a local business owner here in Wollongong. A mate who's was a TAFE teacher in Port Macquarie. We've just been, we've just stayed connected.
So cool.
Since we finished Teachers College when we were 22, 1979. We've stayed connected.
1979 you graduated.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. And you're still going to the boxing gym like most days. I've seen you there, Doug.
Well, I'm doing the best,
I'm going to ask you, like, how are you feeling? Like, my parents retired. They did okay. They retired at a good age. And they'll admit this, but their personal health actually went downhill.
Yeah, look,
especially they worked hard for many years, and then
and my health has improved significantly
since you retired.
Absolutely.
Physical and mental.
Absolutely, and probably mostly mental. I would suggest. Bit of backstory. Well, being a school principal, challenging. The demands that come across your desk every day in terms of decisions to make. And things to be done in a time in education in Australia where accountabilities are increasing all the time, parental demands are increasing all the time, justification wanted for all sorts of decisions all the time. A bit of a backstory in terms of some health stuff. My oldest brother passed away from cancer while I was still working. His initial cancer was prostate cancer.
All right.
When he died, I thought maybe it's time for me to be doing some testing, and that showed up some low-grade spots of cancer in my prostate, and family history where my mother had died of ovarian cancer when I was very young. So, I decided that removal of my prostate surgery was the thing to do. So, the outcome of that has been fantastic. The physical health is amazing in terms of just because it is.
Was it more of a preventative decision? Like, you said you had something, or was it advised, or was it necessary, or could you have avoided that operation?
Oh, well, yeah. There's always choice. The other thing they talk about is watchful surveillance, where you keep a track on your PSA levels and those sorts of things. I had a a specialist that I trusted. I'd met with him a few times and I'd had recommendations from other people who'd been to him. I trusted him. And the clincher for me was around the family history. A brother died of cancer, my mother died of cancer, both in terms of reproductive cancers. So I thought, this is the right decision to make. So, and I have had no regrets. The outcome has been really good. Really
you look
good.
well. And I was exercising with you today, and I remember thinking a few times can't keep up with Doug.
I think I did more sit-ups than you did.
You did. I was sluggish today. Like I said, I've been doing Muay Thai and boxing.
Yeah.
And I think I should have had a rest day today.
Yeah.
That's my excuse for not being able to keep up with you.
But I'm enjoying the fitness training. I walk a lot. I go up to North Wollongong Beach and walk a lot.
It's good, isn't it?
And certainly my mental health is far better.
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about mental health on this show. For me, the severity of mental health actually stood out when I was teaching grade 12 PDHPE, the theory subject. There's a big component on epidemiology.
Yep.
And, we have to, analyse the health statistics of the country. Yep. We look at the census data and it's one of those things I've got to just teach this to the kids, but it's actually quite in-depth and complex. And I just all of a sudden found it really interesting. It went from something I've just got to teach to something I became really passionate about.
Because you're teaching that stuff to kids where for some of those kids you're teaching that to, that's their story.
Thank you.
That's their story.
Yeah, and it's so relevant.
Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, whether it's them or someone they know. Road trauma, that's their story.
I can't believe you said that, because I'd often do a thing in the classroom and I'd ask the students to put their hand up if they knew anyone that had been affected by any of those things, like type 2 diabetes, cancer, and definitely 90% of the room.
Yep.
And so it's very relevant and significant to the real world and the world they're living in. So, but what really got me intrigued was you look at health data from the 1900s and virtually no cancer, no type 2 diabetes. And I mean, mental health is not even on there. No. Okay. And then you sort of get to the 50s and 60s and all of a sudden there's these new diseases emerge, type 2 diabetes, cancer, different types of cancer. And then as it goes on, 70s, 80s, all of a sudden there's this new one, mental illness, and it's spiking and overtaking all the other lines on this graph. And I'm just wow.
Yeah.
And then if I look in the environment and the world around me and the people I'm close to, I've been impacted on by suicide by family and friends and I know other people that have been as well, and I know other people that are heavily medicated and dealing with students on a day-to-day basis.
And those things you mentioned around, suicide, self-harm, medication, they're at quite an extreme end of the continuum of mental health as well.
Agreed.
Because it's, average people on average days who are trying to manage anxieties or their stress levels, and they're just as important, the whole destigmatising of mental health and people being able to talk about how they're feeling, if they're okay, can I help? They're all important things that we need to do to break down the stigmas that exist around mental health. Back in the day when I was a kid, it would have been called a nervous breakdown.
Right.
We talked about, people, friends, family having a nervous breakdown. Well, that was, it wasn't code for mental health because that wasn't the talk around mental health, but that's what it was, anxiety, stress levels, unmanaged, undealt with.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that those stigmas are being broken down. Is that the right word, stigmas? But also, and there is a really increased awareness, and it's
Absolutely.
okay, and it's so okay to talk about it.
Yep.
More so than it was, but I still personally feel that, guys are still really struggling, I think, with the talking part.
Yeah, no, I agree. Why is that? A whole range of reasons, socialisation, what are considered to be
gender stereotypes,
the appropriate male characteristics, gender stereotypes. Don't talk about your emotions. It's funny that you've raised that because the same group of friends who I have Red Wine Friday with, not often are our conversations about, how you're really going. A couple of times, yep. And with a couple of them you can have those conversations, but often they're quite superficial conversations of, generally how things are, but, not to the depth of, are things good, everything okay, do you need any help, any struggles going on.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's funny. I love, that Are You OK day?
Yep.
I think that's such a good day because often I cruise around the school and almost as a joke, like, are you okay? Like, I do it every year. Yeah. And I've actually had moments where I'm like, are you okay? And then someone breaks into tears. I'm like, okay, I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
Even though I was sort of half joking because it's Are You OK day. Yep. It's brilliant, just brilliant.
And the interesting thing around that for teachers is that, we've talked earlier about the increasing wellbeing demands and mental health demands that come with that. And I think that makes teachers uncomfortable because I think sometimes teachers feel as though they need to know what to do to help manage those, and they don't. They're not the experts. What they need to be able to do is direct to the right supports. Is it the school counsellor that this student needs to go and see? Is it the year advisor this student needs to go and see? Is it some outside of school support that this student needs to be lined up with? So
gotcha.
I think the role of teachers is not to be able to solve lots of mental health issues for kids, but it's to be able to be empathetic and, provide the right lines of support and direction to get them to the supports where the expertise is.
Gotcha. So what about the well-being and the mental health of our everyday teachers? Because, okay, after being an educational leader for many years, do you think teachers are being supported in that respect?
Oh, look,
that's a loaded question.
That's a real loaded question. The whole business of staff well-being, it's as much up there with student well-being.
Definitely.
And as we've come through the COVID pandemic and what that has meant for the operation of schools, what that's meant for teachers who have become particularly nervous because of the potential for infection, because of, personal circumstances for them. But even beyond that, I think staff wellbeing is absolutely paramount.
But does the school systems and is the current system supporting them? Yes, okay, they can go on stress leave.
Yep.
But that's kind of like the Band-Aid approach. That's the end result.
Yeah, look,
how do we prevent it?
I think it's lots of little ways to show that teachers are appreciated. It's the thank yous, it's the morning teas, it's the provision of staff lunch sometimes.
Okay.
It's I was in a school where what was it called? I can't even remember what it was called. But you drew names out of a hat, and in a particular week you just had to do something of gratitude for the teacher whose name came out of that. You did it anonymously, but you just did something for them as a way to show your gratitude for them. Now, they might just seem like little things and potentially insignificant things, but if they're things that are in the culture of the workplace, then they become important things. Then they become so. It's about the culture that sits there. It's not about we haven't done anything for staff wellbeing for a few weeks, so I think
Let's
we'll do
tick that
this.
box.
Let's tick that box.
Yeah.
I think it's about the whole culture of wellbeing you develop in any workplace. In my context, it was a school where it's a culture of wellbeing that sits around students, but also a culture of wellbeing that sits around staff as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, after working overseas and seeing a different approach to it, I feel like you really make a good point there around setting a culture, and I do think that's up to school leaders to do that.
Yeah.
Like one cultural difference I noticed is that all teachers at lunchtime, obviously food was put on for the whole school, teachers included. All teachers at lunchtime would actually stop and have their lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds really like a fundamental that you should do anyway. But I mean, a lot of teachers in public schools are not. I mean, I know I wasn't.
Doesn't happen often in
and if I
schools.
was having lunch, I was like generally standing up, and I'd have kids at the staff room door, and that was it. And then I'd be off to class. But it was like all teachers had lunch and ate together every day.
Yep.
And then they also had a thing where they had a yoga nidra class every lunchtime where you'd go for 20 minutes.
Yep.
And you could just go whenever you wanted, and they do a yoga nidra. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like a type of relaxation meditation where you lay down, guided meditation, and I'd often fall asleep in it. Like it's a really good sleep yoga. Yeah, and oh my God, like if I did that once a day, like for 20 minutes, like I was just it made such a difference.
Access, making staff aware, you can't drag people to these things, and some people would argue, and I agree with the argument that, people are responsible for their own well-being as well to some degree, that they need to step up and take some responsibility. But, to make access to resources easy. So, for example, things like just mindfulness apps, that, something comes through the principal's email system and you send that off to all staff that says, this has just come up, this might be worth using. Mindfulness is something that some people engage with and some people don't.
Gotcha.
But to be able to share resources and share opportunities for people to think about, would that work for me? Well, I might give that a go.
Amazing.
One of the things I did want
that. Yeah, I love I just love that you did go back to personal responsibility, because I think teachers do have the right to say no to things too.
Yep.
And another thing I've noticed is that like this continuous casualisation of the workforce, where there's more temporary and casual teachers in schools than there ever was, and you have these teachers that are on year-by-year contracts who are vying for jobs within the school, who will say yes to everything. And actually won't talk about their mental health because they want to look like they're coping and they're managing because out of fear of like, well, this could be detrimental to a permanent position.
Yeah, you're right.
But I still feel that teachers have a right to say no to things, and we take on too much.
Yeah. I mean, as a principal of a school, one of the challenges I found was the balance between asking teachers to take on something different and new, whether it was a new program or a new process or a new way of doing things in a school, that, you'd work through, you'd consulted on, you thought, this is the right way for us to go. And for those teachers who didn't think that was the right thing to do, sometimes the first pushback line was, you're not thinking about staff wellbeing.
Ooh, it's a tricky one.
That's an interesting balance because sometimes your workplace has to change, your workplace has to move on, your workplace has to take on new initiatives and new ways of doing things.
And it actually keeps teachers inspired.
Yep.
Like I know there's been times I felt like principals and deputies have pushed me into programs that I didn't really want to do, and I felt like it was hard and it was stressful. But then they're the same programs that I am super proud of and have actually inspired me to keep going with education. And I feel like if I didn't get those pushes, I would just be like on autopilot for the next 20 years till I can get my retirement and bail.
And as a school leader, you're always looking out for, things that were key for me were always looking for leadership potential in other people, because I was very interested in building leadership potential as broadly as I could across the school.
Well, can I ask why?
Because I think the more leadership potential you have in a school, the better the school is. And it's not just about positional leadership of the principal, the deputy principals, the head teachers. It's about teachers as leaders and whether they take on, programs, step up to run the SRC, take on roles as year advisors. I think you see potential in people and, to nudge them, suggest, urge them, to think about other opportunities for them. I think that all adds to building the leadership capacity in a school. And in a system like the Department of Education, which is a huge public education system in New South Wales, you're always looking to develop the next leaders to come through, whether that's positional leadership or, just taking on leadership roles as a classroom teacher. But I think I know I was always, I think I was always proud of being able to see leadership capacity in people and offer them opportunities and suggest they think about doing this or that.
Yeah.
They didn't always take it up, and that was okay. That was never an issue for me. But I was always looking to open the door for people to be able to step through.
Nice. And I also think it forces teachers to see the school from different perspectives.
Yep.
Because I know there's times when I've been sitting in relieving positions, all of a sudden you see the school from a completely different angle, and it changes. Like, it's so different. And then conversely, it's made me actually respect the rest of the leadership team and what they're trying to do and actually empathise.
And you're then able to see about, so that's why that decision was made, or so that's why we're doing that.
It's tough, man. I don't know how you were a principal. I don't know how were you a principal? I know I couldn't do it. How'd you do it?
I did it because I have a very deep sense of the place of public education and a need to provide the best opportunities for students you can. And as a principal, you're not in a classroom every day with students, but it was just the opportunity to guide and develop some vision for a school and have some influence on that.
So would you say that your passion for public education is maybe based in the desire to create equality in our society?
It's interesting you asked that, and it's interesting you use that word, because when I was thinking today that we were having this conversation, my passion lies in equity and social justice.
Equity and social justice. I love it.
That, providing opportunities for all students as best you can for them to improve as humans was really important to me, and that's why public education was the only education system I've ever worked in. I get it that other people have other motivations to work in other systems, but public education, I was a product of public education, and it's the only education system I've worked in, and I'm very proud of that.
Should be,
very
Doug.
proud of that.
You know what, man? It's been epic. It's been an hour and 11 minutes. And I kind of feel like that's a good way to end, man.
Yeah,
it just sort of sounded like the way you said it. It was like,
no.
I'm very, like, it's a nice way to, like a nice little stamp on what you're saying.
Very cool.
But I do want to just say that again, I have a whole new respect for principals. And any education, anyone who's, anyone who's brave enough to sit in those chairs and take on the diverse range of issues and decision making that has to be done. It takes a special human.
I had a great mentor who, when I talked to him, because it was a him, about leadership and being a school principal, before I was a school principal, he said the number one quality you need is to be courageous.
Nice.
And the courage that comes from managing all of that you've just described in terms of decisions, personalities, politics, unhappy people, happy people.
Yeah. Do you think public education is actually supporting the most vulnerable in the schools?
Absolutely.
When you talk about equity,
yeah.
Do you feel like the current school model is geared towards equity?
Oh, look, is it geared toward equity? Well, we have lots of funding that comes into schools. It's called equity funding. I'm not to say whether schools use that equity funding to the best of their abilities. Not for me to say. But I don't know of any, and I know lots of principals and I know lots of teachers, and I would suggest that all of them are working the best they can to support the most disadvantaged, the most vulnerable, the most disengaged. They take up lots of time and effort, but teachers, leaders in schools work tirelessly to support all kids. The most academic, the smartest, the sportiest, the best.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that.
But they also go above and beyond to support those students who, Do
you think it's an even balance, though? Do you think that, on the other end of the scale, the top end, where the students and even the teachers that want to progress and excel and go to the next levels, is the system as geared towards supporting them as well? Like both end. If we look at a balance between the most vulnerable and high
most able.
Most able.
Yep.
Okay, that might be a better word.
Yep.
So I was going to say higher achievers.
Yeah.
Do you think the system is actually providing funding and support on both ends? Or is it coming
for students?
I guess I am talking primarily about students, yeah.
So I think the most able students, they're supported by school, but they're also supported by parents who care. They're supported. They have great networks of support around them, and that works to their advantage. Yeah. The most disadvantaged kids, the most vulnerable kids may not have that same support at home, may not have the same strong networks around them, and that's where school comes into play, to help fill that breach a bit, I guess, is how I describe it.
Oh, okay, nice, man.
Now, in terms of dollar value, does more dollars go to the disadvantaged kids? Probably it does. Is that where most of more of the dollars should go to?
Is that the solution? That's what I mean. Is that going to fix the problem? It's not really the solution.
Well, it's part of a huge social solution. And schools reflect society.
They do.
Schools reflect society.
And I must admit, the longer I'm in this profession, the more serious I take it more serious than ever. I think for many, for early years, I didn't really take it that serious. I was like, it's just a job. I can, But now that, I do. I really do feel like, like you just said, it's what shapes and molds our society. And that's why I get really frustrated when it's not prioritised by governments.
Yeah. Look, I think, for those who, a great friend talks about university and studying at university as the parking station of life. You go there, you do stuff,
Parking station of life.
And then you grow up, and in terms of teaching, you go into schools, teachers go into schools 22, 23 years of age, increasing percentage of mature age students. But, you're young and, and we grow up. Maturity, is a progression.
It is.
And for those people who then switch on to thinking that education is something where I can make a difference here, they're the ones who stay. The ones who don't, they leave.
Yeah.
And you'd rather them leave to go somewhere else into a different workplace or occupation than staying in schools and where they're not motivated, they're not passionate, they're not wanting to do the best they can for their students.
Yeah. I'm sure you would have seen a lot of that over the years, but
not a lot.
Not a lot?
Not a lot.
That's good.
Not a lot.
That's a very good,
not
nice,
a lot.
diplomatic response.
Not a lot. No.
No, I agree. No, me either. Actually, no, I think about
Not
it. Me either. You don't. So yeah, man, I love it. It's been really good. I'm so glad I connected with you, and I'm so glad to have you on. Now, listen, it's remiss of me to have not told you this before we started. I've just been a little bit excited because I have a new production studio, and I'm still learning how to use it. I'm going to give you a round of applause, Doug. No, I don't want to be cheesy or overproduced, but I'm pretty excited. But I always ask my guests to come with a cause that they want to support or advocate for. Now, I hate to put you on the spot, but
that's okay.
I feel like some of the themes and the topics that we've spoken about today, we could link to some very worthy causes, and that I will actually link to your show notes, and then that will follow around on the various platforms. So, is there anything that comes to mind, Doug?
Yes, I have a friend who is doing a lot of work.
Actually, can you just stop there? Sorry, I've got background music for it. You ready? Okay, sorry, I've got background music. Okay, let's go. Tell us a story.
Can I have a couple?
Go for it. I'll just have the background music playing in the background.
It's probably three things. One is a friend who lost a daughter to ovarian cancer, the same cancer that took my mum. He's doing a lot of great work in that space around research around ovarian cancer. I have been, I currently still am an ambassador for the White Ribbon Foundation. Now, the White Ribbon Foundation has had a bit of a tricky path in the last 12 months or so.
For those that don't know, would you mind explaining what the White Ribbon Foundation is?
White Ribbon is a men's-led organisation to do lots to reduce domestic violence and family violence. Men's led because, most of the perpetrators of family violence, not only and not always, but mostly men are the perpetrators of family and domestic violence. So I've been an ambassador in that space, and they're just going through a process of reinventing themselves, White Ribbon Australia. And the other one is my son has cerebral palsy, very mild cerebral palsy, but CP Australia is, a group that we're always conscious of in terms of the great work they do for people with cerebral palsy.
Amazing, Doug. You're such an overachiever. Like I put you on the spot and you came up with 3 awesome ones. So I'm going to actually put a link to the White Ribbon Foundation, the Cancer Council, ovarian cancer.
Look, I'm not completely sure of the name of it, whether it's Ovarian Cancer Australia. I'm just not quite sure, but we can follow that one up and check that one out.
I'll look it up, but I'll put a link. I'll put a link to that cause, and also put a link to CP Australia
or CP Foundation.
Yeah, so amazing causes that you can, I often find that people want to help, but they don't know how, and I just want to give people like some options and ideas, and maybe one of these issues that Doug raises resonates with you. So you can find links to these causes in Doug's show notes, which will be on the TerribleHappyTalks.com website. And you can also find the show on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. And you can click on those links and it'll take you to their websites and make a donation. So listen, Doug, I've got some presents for you.
Presents? Fantastic.
Yeah. So the first one, it's not actually here, don't get too excited, but the guys at Indosol will be sending you a pair of shoes.
Fantastic.
A pair of flip-flops or slides. I'll have to get your shoe size. We won't talk about your shoe size on recording. We'll get your shoe size, and big shout out to Indosol for supporting the show and supplying a gift to all guests. And if you go to indosol.com and use promo code THT, you'll also get a 15% discount, and you'll be supporting me to continue producing weekly episodes. And the other one, now don't get too excited. Just hang on a second. I'm going to get in my bag. Hang on. Just say something intelligent.
I've got nothing to say. I'm all talked out.
All right. So where are we? Okay, I'm back. Now listen. You get the THT Circle logo sticker. I only give these out to people that have been on the show.
Fantastic.
So there's only 63 of these in circulation. Okay, so and you told me at the start of the show that we're coming up to your 63rd birthday, and you're going to be episode 63, which is like super cool, man.
That's nice.
There you go, bro.
Fantastic.
Thank you, and I'll get your shoe size and address for your shoes, and yeah, man, I think that's it.
No.
Yeah.
And can I just say, earlier I talked about students who've come through university that have achieved, and it's fantastic to have caught up with you, Shan.
Thanks, man.
An incidental meeting in the gym a couple of weeks ago, and then to be sitting here with you now, contributing to your podcast. Fantastic. It's a real pleasure.
Oh, thanks,
it's a real
Doug.
pleasure.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. And like I said, again, this job, this educational journey, I've gone through these ebbs and flows where I can't do it anymore. I'm over it. I hate it and I love it. Yeah. And but as time goes on, what's keeping me in it is the relationships. Yep. And the fact that I can still maintain a relationship with one of my university lecturers 15 years later. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a long time since we've crossed paths.
I think it's special, and it's a job with purpose. And yeah, man, thanks for the inspiration. And I don't know. I keep looking at my new recorder and I'm like, how are we going to end this? I've got all these buttons to press. Anyway, man, let's go.
Good on you,
so and also Tectonic Coffee. Thanks for supporting the show. Go to tectonic.com, use promo code THT. Got to drop that in. All right, let's get out of here. Let's go and have a cup of tea.
Thanks, Shan.